Welcome to Parent-Tween Connection Talks, where we bring you insight from the experts who can help you navigate life with teens and tweens. I'm Clarissa Constantine, your host and founder of the Parent-Tween Connection. I've worked with teenagers and their families for more than 20 years, and I believe that the more supported and knowledgeable their parents and members of the proverbial village feel, the better they can connect with and advocate for their teens and tweens. And ultimately, that means we'll lose fewer kids to suicide. So join us as Parent-Tween Connection talks about anything and everything teen and tween related. And when we're done, we invite you to come on over to our Facebook group to continue the conversations. Today's guest is Linda Hollenback of Hollenback Consulting. As a college and career strategist, Linda partners with families to guide teens and young adults from high school to successful career. Using a holistic and strategic approach, she empowers families to confidently navigate to and through college, determining the best fit schools and crafting an application strategy that maximizes admissions and scholarship offers. With you every step of the way, she teaches teens and young adults to use high school and college as a launchpad to a successful and fulfilling career. During our conversation together, Linda and I talked about two important aspects of helping our teens use high school and college as that launchpad. The first is important questions to ask your teenagers to help them discover who they are and what direction they want to go. And then we talked about major mile markers along the roadmap to successful college admissions. Listen in as we talk to Linda Hollenback, one of Parent-Tween Connection's trusted experts. Linda Hollenback, super excited to have you with us. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I love having our trusted experts on our podcast because for anybody who's listening who isn't familiar with the Parent-Tween Connection Trusted Expert Network, we have folks who are experts in their field who have chosen to join Parent-Tween Connection. They've been background checked, they've been reference checked and interviewed, and we can tell you with confidence, hey, these folks really are the pros that they say that they are. And I love being able to feature them because they've got so much knowledge to bring to families. So today, Linda, who's the founder of Hollenback Consulting, she and I are going to be talking about crafting the journey from high school to a successful career, which goes farther than I think a lot of families are thinking when it's like, oh, I want to get my kid into college. But there's the next step to that. And so that's kind of where we're headed today. So, Linda, you are a big proponent, I know, of really helping students kind of discover who they are as human beings before they even think about the college admissions process. Because we don't want to send, a musician into a chemical engineering degree, right? And that might seem kind of obvious. But where do we start? What are some of the questions that parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, members of the proverbial village should be asking teenagers to help them kind of with a longer perspective?
Sure. So you're absolutely right. I very much, in my practice, I call myself a college career strategist. So I'm a hybrid between the independent education consultant, the college admissions officer, and a career coach. I like to see them as two parts of one whole, because the college journey is, ultimately what you want as parents, as the village, is that you want your kid to be successful, you want them to be happy, and you want them to be financially independent so they get off your books eventually. So I see high school as the launch pad to the future. I know it is a little hard. Some parents are like, but how do you expect them to know? I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. How do you expect them to know at 16? And it's not that I expect them to know. I'm not asking them to sign a contract in stone, because the truth is, even over the last year, how much has the world changed? How many industries have changed? I often say to parents, if someone would have told you 15, 20 years ago that you'd make phone calls on a watch, that we would live our lives on these computer screens and we'd talk to each other over video, you would have said, you're watching too much Back to the Future. You're too into sci-fi. You're crazy. And so I want students to be flexible. I want them to be open to possibilities. I want them to be the creators of the next possibilities, of how different industries will transform so we can do things better and smarter and more kind and more just and healthier for the greater planet. But it's in asking the questions and getting them to start thinking about that impact they want to have on the world earlier, that you can then set them up to be more thoughtful about who they are, what excites them, what motivates them, what their strengths are, how they can use those strengths and those passions in order to know themselves better, to look for schools that are better fit, and to kind of have a head start as they get to college versus the more traditional floundering around. I have no idea for the first 2 years of college, and then the scramble for the last 2 years of college once they do kind of figure it out, to try to make the most and get what they need to out of those 2 years. Why not have them do a little of the digging, a little of the exploration, to at least get them to narrow it down a little in terms of, as you said, if they're a musician or into the arts versus chemistry versus heading to college going, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. So that's where the story begins. I don't know if we need a quick pause, but I kind of break that up into a few key points along the journey, a few key tips for the parents, for the village. Mm-hmm. So if you're okay, I can kind of dive into the first one.
Let's go for it.
All right, so my tip number one is to put them into the driver's seat. And I know this is so hard, Mom and Dad. Let them have the steering wheel. It is their journey. And yes, you're an important part of it, and you want them to be on the right journey, but you have to empower them to have the steering wheel. Make sure that they have the roadmap. Make sure that they have the cooler with the snacks. Make sure that they have the confidence and the know-how to drive the car, but then allow them to drive it and to be the guardrails. So that way, if they need to nudge, if they get a little swervy on the road, you're there to keep them from falling off the cliff, but that you're kind of pushing them back into the lane for them to drive forward and to choose their destination. There's no, most paths in life and most people in life, you may have, if you can figure out what your North Star, where you're going, you can come to it from this side or come to it from this side, but it's that greater, bigger vision that's what's really important. So that's what we're striving to help them to figure out. What is their North Star? What is their destination? And so some of the questions that you might want to ask, one of my favorite questions that I ask students, and they don't know the answer the first time, you don't expect them to, but it's getting them thinking. It's questions that get them thinking. What impact do you want to have on the world? Whether the world is the great big world or whether it's maybe a small slice of the world. Is it a cause that they care about, or a particular population that they care about, or something that they're, an area that they're interested in? What impact do you want to have? Another one, how would you like to make the world a better place? Where do you see something that you wish you could come up with a solution for? And how might you take one step towards that solution? What are you most curious about? Again, like what cause, what community ideas do you care about? Really getting them, trying to see if you can get them to break down where their interests lie. And some of that you may know from the clubs that they're in, or things that they've done, or things that they've brought up, or things that they like to talk about from the news.
So at what point do you think it's appropriate to offer a reflection to them? For example, I actually went through this conversation with my husband when he was, 35, 36 years old, because it wasn't a conversation that he had in high school, right? And he was the kid who was really good in math, like perfect test scores in math. And they were like, you're going to be an engineer. And it turned out that he hated it. And I reflected to him at one point when a career change was obvious to me for him, but not so for him. I said, I see that you really like spending time in the gym and being fit and healthy. And I see that you get really passionate around issues relative to teenagers, particularly with mental health and suicide conversations. So, I mean, he was a full grown adult. I was his fiance at the time. And so I reflected that to him. At what point is that kind of a reflection to a teenager useful, would you say?
I mean, I think that if it's done in a reflection way versus you should do,
Hmm.
when you put those, it's really all in how you ask it, how you present things. Similarly, when you ask some of the questions I mentioned earlier, so what impact would you like to have? I don't know. A really great coach once said to me, reflect back and stop and say, but what if you did? And pause. It's not, I mean, it's all in how you say it. If you as parents say, but what if you did know? Well, you're gonna get defensive. You're gonna shut them down.
Right.
But if you kind of in a very gentle and curious kind of way say to, but what if you did know? It's amazing in that by giving them that pause, by giving them the chance to tell you what they're feeling on the inside, because we all have some inner things that we like that maybe we're afraid to voice, especially when it comes to teens and parents. There's a lot of times a lot of pressure, it may not even be real, where the teen feels that mom or dad, they don't want to let them down by letting them know what they really want, especially if mom or dad are really jazzed up with this idea of them becoming the engineer or going into computer science or going into taking over the family's business. They don't want to let you down by
Mhm.
telling you that their gut's telling them that something else is calling them.
Right.
And so by reflecting what you see, a strength that you see, an interest that you see, in a way that is from a place of not you should go explore this, or I want you to do this, but more of what do you think? I've noticed that you really seem to get excited when you're working with the kids at the summer camp. Have you thought about different career paths that might have you working with younger kids?
Hmm.
Doesn't necessarily have to be a teacher or running a camp. There are many other fields, but does that open the door for that conversation for them to tell you? But make sure you ask it, present it, and give a pause. Give them the space to again take that driver's seat and share with you.
And that's a theme that I want to reemphasize in case anybody's listening to this as their first Parent Tween Talks podcast. So many professionals that we all engage with really encourage parents to say, give your kids space to answer. They don't always have an answer, they're not ready to answer, or maybe they just aren't processing as quickly as we'd like them to. So
Mhm.
drop a nugget, let it process, and that's just some people, whether they're teenagers or not, is that they just need that processing time. They need, like, they don't take something in and make a snap decision or have a snap response. They need to cogitate for a while. So you're saying, what impact do you want to have on your world, however big or small they define your world? You're saying, what what problem do you want to solve, even, or who do you want to serve, something like those types of things. So thinking about it not so much as what's the career, but what impact really.
Yeah. And then, kind of moving, if we want to move to kind of tip two, building on that, is ask for directions. So I like to tell parents to think about, and instead of saying, you should go, or I want you to talk to, instead ask them, what skills do you want to develop? What career paths are you curious about? Is there anyone, or who can I introduce you to? And so allowing them again that control and being empowered to meet and connect. I mean, building a network and building relationships, especially when it comes to with adults, when you're a teen, can be really intimidating. And so
Mm-hmm.
how can you help to make it less intimidating and help to teach them skills about building relationships and networking, informational interviewing, and exploration,
Mm-hmm.
that are skills that you've taken potentially decades to develop, or maybe you're still working on yourself. So,
Right.
how can you help them to start understanding how important relationships are to career success. I mean, from my career coaching side of my practice, I mean, 80 to 85% of jobs come through personal connection.
Mhm.
And so you need to lay the groundwork with them, starting as early as high school, about building relationships and how that opens doors for them. And it's not about who's going to do something for me, but it's got to be reciprocal, not only in terms of what they can learn from the adult, but how might they offer themselves as service, whether it be that adult's business would love to get some insight into what the teens are looking for to bring in new clients. Maybe it's that opportunity for them to shadow or intern or be a resource. So it can be two ways. They do have things to offer, even if they are only 15 or 16.
Right.
And so helping them to understand that and build that, but by allowing them again to be in that driver's seat and ask them for directions about who can I make an introduction for you? I'm part of this chamber of commerce, or I'm part of a professional association, or, we have the family friend that's in this field. Would you want me to help make an introduction so you can talk about your interest in his or her career path?
And my experience has been, I do a ton of networking. Obviously, Parent Tween Connection is all about a network that supports families and teenagers. But goodness, so many professionals whom I know personally love the opportunity to have
Yes.
a conversation with a younger person who's interested in pursuing this similar career path. Whether it's like I just recently introduced one of my tutoring students to a photographer. The young lady is starting her own photography business, and I happen to know a professional photographer who started her business at 16. And
Awesome.
the professional was like, yes, I'd love to talk to the young person because goodness, if I can help them avoid some of the pitfalls that I fell into, fantastic. But goodness, mentorship opportunities and even um advisory opportunities or internship opportunities or even paid professional opportunities for the youth. We never know what could be out there. So I like that idea. Cool. So then the second thing that I know that you're a big proponent of is looking down the road and going, okay, what are the milestones that I need to be hitting? Like, what are the mile markers if we're talking to parents of high school kiddos at this point, or even middle school kiddos, going, hey, what are the mile markers that I need to hit once I have a sense of what problems I might want to impact or what solutions I might want to find and what skills I need to develop? How do we start putting that into a time frame for high school kids going into college and then into a career?
Sure. So I like to think about it, for me, middle school and even into ninth grade, that's kind of your period of real exploration, particularly ninth grade in many districts, not all, but many districts, ninth grade is you're switching to the new school, the high school. That's a real transition and takes some adjustment. And, there are issues of bullying and things like that that can happen in that freshman year. So it's really encouraging exploration, but also giving them space to get their feet on the ground. I'll get phone calls from families saying, I think they should be in an SAT prep course and they need to be taking that first exam freshman. That is not, I mean, Clarissa, you're the text expert of the two of us, but in my opinion, that is way too early to be putting that kind of pressure on them. They need to get their feet on the ground, get used to the college or the high school level curriculum, figure out where they are within the curriculum and the curricular opportunities that the school is having. I think this is a great year for them to sit down and start building the relationship with their school-based counselor, encouraging them to really think about, so that way they can be thoughtful, reflective, and strategic about the courses that they have and the options and opportunities that they'll have over the 4 years of high school. So that way they don't get to junior year going, oh, now I know I wanted to go into engineering and I missed out. I didn't take that higher level calculus course. So you want to kind of at least have the conversation, And this can be that first one, maybe you set it up with both parents and the teen. But then you encourage the teen should be building the relationship with the counselor as well. That's really important, that the counselor gets to know them and gets to hear their voice and their desires. That's going to allow them down the road to write a really great recommendation letter if the student themselves has built the relationship and it's not just all through mom and dad. So building that relationship, exploration, encourage them. Yes, of course, continue the things that they maybe loved in middle school and they were involved in with middle school. But really, when it comes to the colleges, they're only going to be looking at 9th through 12th, and it's really mostly 11th, because 12th, you're just starting out that 12th grade year when you're applying to colleges. And so they're looking to see, not necessarily that, they played piano at age, starting at age 5. Did they continue that? No. If they love music, yes, sure. But colleges don't care just for the sake of continuing it. So 9th grade is the reason they start looking at 9th grade, is because that's usually the point when the teen gets a little bit more say into those extracurriculars. And so they want to see, what does the teen really love to do? What do they do with their time? How do they like to contribute to their community, whether it be a school community or the greater community? And so you want to encourage them to continue things that they enjoy. There's no need to have a family clash over an activity that they don't want to continue. They should be involved in something, but it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And pushing them to try at least one new thing that freshman year so they can dip their toe into something. And so that's 9th grade, really that exploration and foundation, really setting themselves up. What the colleges are really most interested in is they want to see that progression and growth. So looking at the curriculum opportunities, did they challenge themselves? Did they rise to it each year and rise to that challenge? So, that doesn't necessarily mean perfect straight A's, but so maybe if they had a B+ in freshman year or a B, do they bump it up a little to that B+ or the A- in sophomore year? If they, got that straight A in the regular math course, maybe did they challenge themselves and take honors, even if that means they got the A- that sophomore year. But again, challenging it, rising to the challenge. Sophomore year of discovery. So this is building on the stuff that they learned about themselves through their exploration freshman year, maybe honing in a little bit more, diving in a little bit more. The formal leadership is probably tough. Most of the time, those formal leadership roles in schools are reserved for junior and senior year. But how can they even informally, do they step up in a club that they really like, or something that ties to that interest that they've started to discover? Is there an opportunity for them to step up on a committee, or if there's an event that the club is holding, can they step up and maybe lead creating the posters or lead in helping to connect and get their classmates involved? So how can they create some informal leadership for themselves that allows them to further explore the interest, to further explore themselves as a person and as a leader, and allows them to shine within their own school community for those future leadership opportunities? So kind of that is the discovery phase. Again, building on the questions we talked about earlier, you want to make sure that you're encourage them to, even outside of the school, maybe connect in and take up opportunities from that mentorship and internships.
Can I add a note in here?
Yes, please.
So one of the things, and granted, I know I'm not the career specialist here, but having worked in this space for a couple of decades, one aspect that I've seen a lot of parents, very well-intentioned parents, to be clear, they don't want their kiddos going into a dead end, quote unquote, right? Or they think, well, there's no future there. And I would love to offer a word of caution to families that the world is changing at an incredibly, incredibly, incredibly fast pace. And the opportunities, and I know I'm speaking to the choir when I say this because we're both entrepreneurs here, but the opportunities for the next generation to create things that we have no concept of. To your point, we can talk through our watch. We have a calculator in our pocket, and not just from a technology perspective, but just from an opportunity perspective. When you were talking about groups or clubs, I'm still friends, thanks to technology and social media, with a woman that I went to high school with who was on the yearbook committee when we were in high school. And now, like, she has made a career out of working in the yearbook industry, so to speak, right? She works with the high school advisors and the high school kiddos who are on yearbook committee to create their yearbooks. She took that she thought at the time maybe was just something fun, and that is now her career. And had her parents said there's no future in yearbook, she might be doing something that she hates now. But so I just want to add that in because I've seen, again, many well-intentioned parents, mine included, there's no future in that. There's no happiness, money, career, whatever. That be careful saying that because we don't necessarily know that that's true.
Mhm. And similarly, I think that we oftentimes, and students really fall victim to this because of the way our education is structured in that K to 12, and particularly the high school. You know, they have the biology class, they have their chemistry class, they have their math class. They're all very siloed. But the truth is, when it comes to the college and majors, and honestly, even in the work world, it's much, much more interdisciplinary. You know, no great engineer who comes up with this, you know, amazing machine is going to go anywhere with that amazing machine if it can't be produced in a way that makes it marketable to the company. You
Right.
know, you know, if you come up with you've got this great idea and you're very artistic and you're a designer, but it can't be manufactured, that there's no material that's going to be able to do, you know, that's not going to work. They have to work together. And so there's so many majors out there that are really interesting hybrids. So if your child excels at art, don't just say, oh, you're going to be a starving artist. There are ways for artists to have fruitful, meaningful careers. There are different career paths. There are cool intersections. You know, there are schools with, you know, majors that it's you know, scientific illustration, where it's the cross between someone who really loves the sciences and they love the arts. That's a dynamic field, especially with all of the different scientific technologies that are out there that need that illustration to help people or help create product design. I mean, there's just so many different things out there. And so you really want to make sure that you're not putting your own kind of limiting beliefs on
Mhm.
what your team might be capable of, because you don't know how they might be the one that's going to revolutionize some other industry, you know, in the years to come.
I keep chuckling. Even IKEA needs the artists to create the demonstration of how we can put together the pieces of furniture that the engineers have created. So, all right. So you said ninth grade, get their feet under them. 10th grade, really dive into that exploration. And that's maybe that opportunity for some reflection. I see that you really like doing this. How can that help you impact your world? And then it
Mhm.
seems like that collegiate exploration would be the next logical step of where are those schools that have those interdisciplinary opportunities.
Yeah, so I think 10th grade is a great time also, you know, by the latter portion, maybe winter break or the latter portion of sophomore year is a great time to partner up with someone like Clarissa to get that ACT, SAT diagnostic, figure out which test is going to be their main test, to start kind of making progress towards the college planning process. I know that feels really early, you know, 10th grade parents aren't really thinking about it, but by starting some baby steps in 10th, that allows, you know, the 11th and 12th to not feel so stressful. The other thing that you can do in 10th to start, again, that just that little discovery, light touches, doesn't have to be the formal reaching out and going on an official college tour. But hey, if you're going on a family vacation to XYZ, what's the local college that's there that you could step foot on the campus, just to start getting a sense of big school versus little school, taking advantage of your own local area. I mean, I'm in greater Philadelphia, and there are an abundance of both small schools, bigger schools, urban schools, suburban schools. So I tell families, you know, take a Saturday, if it's a nice day, go out for lunch and go wander or just walk around the campus, get a sense of the vibe, the, you know, campus culture. Because just like you, when you were house shopping or apartment shopping, you don't really know until you step foot in the right one and it's like, this one feels like home. Even if it was in your head, oh, I don't, you know, the realtor says, oh, come look at this one. You're like, I don't, you know, that's not really the style I want. You don't know until you step foot into it. Right.
Right.
So that's, you know, 10th grade discovery, starting that light step into the college, thinking college. 11th grade, that's my year of refinement. That's when you really want to encourage them to start really thinking about the college process, really thinking about what it is that they want, what's important to them. Is having close-knit relationships with their teachers and peers really important? Do they, really love research, or, are they more hands-on and want kind of internship? Really challenging them to think about how they might step up in some way in their school or in their community, through a club, through something that they create. And if they're more independent, they're not really into the club and the rah-rah, what can they do on their own with their own skills and talents and interests to do something that has some small impact? That, because not only is that going to be important, they're going to look for it, but a lot of times it's a major essay question. How have you contributed to your community? So you want to make them allow them to do it in their way. It's not just going to volunteer at the soup kitchen just so you can say you did community service. If your teen loves computers and loves video games, challenge them to see, can they make, there's all these kids doing, like, making their own modified version or building their own teams around it, or, they love building computers, build a computer and donate it to a family in need or a nonprofit that could use another system. There are ways that they can be creative to do within their own skill set, their own interest, and still kind of, in some ways, check those boxes of impact and service, et cetera. Standardized testing, I say get that done in junior year. You don't really, if you don't have to, you don't want to be going into fall of senior year right in the throes of applications, still having testing hanging out over your head. You want it done ahead of time so you can focus on your applications kind of summer and into fall of senior year, but also so you know what your scores are, so you can make the right assessments in terms of building a strategic school list. And also junior year, by spring, I would ask for your letters of recommendation. So figure out what two teachers you're going to be asking, so that way you're ahead of the game and not in the throes of they've got 40 or 50 letters to write. Ask in the spring. This is a great time to say, you know what, Mrs. Johnson, I've really loved your math class. You've really inspired me. I know I want a career in STEM, and so I was wondering if you'd be one of my recommenders. Build a resume. You can start doing that even earlier. If I work with a freshman, I start building their resume there, and it's a constant evolution of updating. Just like us as professionals, you should always be updating that and growing it with you. But they want to have that resume to be able to hand to that teacher that they're giving asking of a letter of recommendation for. So having that resume in place. And then 12th grade is your year of your launch. You have to continue being consistent in your grades. You can't have the major senior slide. Ideally, you've used the summer between junior and senior year to get a good head start on your application materials. And so that way you can hopefully go in and really enjoy senior year, make the most of the memories, the leadership, those opportunities, and really make it a great year, which hopefully is full of celebration of all the wonderful things to come.
And I really like that you emphasize that, because I think so often we get so focused on all the academics, all the college bound, career bound type things, that we forget, like, our kids are high school seniors once.
Yeah,
Right.
let
And
them
I think
enjoy, have
especially
fun.
especially we've seen that with COVID and the grief that the class of 2020 experienced. They didn't have their senior proms, they didn't have a graduation the way that we expected that they would. And even going into class of 2021, there's obviously going to be long-term impacts that we can't foresee yet. I think that one of the takeaways that a lot of the families that I've worked with have seen is that those seniors, the junior traditions, the rites of passage, the senior rites of passage are so important. And we saw families and schools and kids getting creative to still have those rites of passage, even though they looked very different than what we anticipated. And so, to the extent that we can, let's remember that they are still kids, that we want them to have those experiences. And the theme in several of the workshops that we've done, Linda, and today's conversation is think ahead, plan ahead, and let the kids drive. They have to be invested. They have to have agency in this process. If they don't, man, it's going to be a whole lot of gnashing of teeth and butting of heads that have other impacts as well, for sure. So,
and it doesn't have to be. So, I mean, when you give them and empower them to create the road in the way that they want to it takes some of that pressure off. There is no right or wrong. There is no magic bullet for college. The closest thing I can give you to a magic bullet of how to get into great colleges is by really allowing the student to figure out who it is they are and what it is they want, and then looking to find the schools. We did a webinar on this, on finding the right fit schools that are going to allow them to shine in the way that they are looking to, that have that match for what they're trying to achieve, the resources, the supports, the professors who are invested and excited about the same topics within the field that they're interested in, finding that match for them by them being able to articulate who they are and what gets them excited and what they're looking for in a college and why the college is that match. That's the magic bullet. That's what colleges want to hear about. It's not about the big, long, shiny brag sheet. It's about the authenticity of the student saying, this is who I am, this is what I can bring to your community, and this is why I think your community is a really great fit for me and what I'm trying to achieve.
Awesome. And so that's actually a tidbit that we're going to go to in an exclusive little segment specifically for members of Parent Tween University. So, Linda, thank you. Thank you. Love having you here on the podcast. And to the folks who are listening, I hope that you've gotten some good information about questions to ask your students, even as young as 7th and 8th grade, about what impact they want to have. That'll start giving them some insight and some reflection opportunities themselves. And then also, as we get into the high school path, what are some of the mile markers or things that we need to be paying attention to throughout the high school time frame? And for anybody who isn't yet a member of Parent Tween University, or you haven't joined the Parent Tween Connection on Facebook, you can find us at parenttweenconnection.com. So Linda, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of Parent Tween Connection Talks. Be sure to check the show notes for any links we mentioned. Also, be sure to subscribe to Parent Tween Connection Talks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube so you don't miss out on any awesome information. If you'd like your own copy of the Foundations of Connection, you can find it right on our homepage at parenttweenconnection.com. Print it out, hang it on your fridge, and use it as a conversation starter with the folks in your family today. And if you want to feel more supported as a parent and have a closer, healthier, happier relationship with the tween in your life, enroll in Parent Tween University. For just $19.99 a month or $199 a year, you'll join a community of parents just like you who are dedicated to having the best relationships they can with their kids. You'll receive exclusive bonus trainings from many of our podcast guests and access to monthly group coaching calls based on my signature coaching program, The Foundations of Connection. So go to www.parenttweenconnection.com today to help ensure that you're the one your kids will talk to when they need someone they can trust. Until next time, keep talking and keep connecting.